And welcome, everyone. I'm Bill Newell from MSONewsports.com. Rick Moore is here as well. Phil Stacy, Salem News, Nick Giannino, Nick Kukru, Gloucester Times, Matt Williams of the Salem News. We're all here, kind of jumbled up the order a little bit here, but welcome, gentlemen. And I use that term not loosely. You guys are gentlemen, so welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Hey, so fall sports, man, there's been a lot of news here in the last couple of weeks. And as of right now, there's no fall sports in the Northeastern Conference, but that could change. And right now, Cape Ann League is I know they've met, and they haven't made real formal announcements yet. But I'm thinking Matt Williams might be our go-to guy to start with on this, and then the rest of you guys can pick up on this. What do you know?
I know that. Well, the Cal principals and the ADs spent a lot of time together yesterday, and the cities and towns are going through the motions. I know Hamilton Wenham School Board approved their fall one season, except for volleyball. They're going to move that. Linfield, same thing. Newburyport, I believe, is beginning the year hybrid, so they don't need school committee approval. So, you know, I know their AD gave a presentation to the committee just, to keep them in the loop and whatnot, but they didn't take a formal vote, I think, because they didn't have to. So I think you can read the tea leaves and figure out that the Cal's going to push forward. I think based on Hamilton, and, this is no insider information, but I think based on what they did and based on what some of the other towns are doing, I think you can make a pretty good bet that volleyball is going to be in fall too for the Cal. Although Masconomet, well, they're not in the Cal anymore, right? You got to get used to that. But I know Masconomet, plans to try to do volleyball. My brain still associates them with the Cal, but I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you can play volleyball in the gym in the wintertime. That's not going to hurt anybody. It's not you don't got to worry about the grass fields or whatever. So I think we're in good shape Cal-wise. And all the towns, the updated map, all the towns are still, green or white or yellow. So that's a good thing. I know the map, came out yesterday. There was some discussion about a couple of the towns, but, the latest map, they're all still white and yellow and green. So, I mean, that's good news.
And just for, again, if anyone's just joining us, not completely following this day-to-day, football has definitely been pushed off to what they call Fall 2, which starts, I guess, at the end of February, or let's just call it March 1, ballpark that a little bit. So all football, no matter what league you're in, would not be played until then at all.
And cheering, don't forget that.
In what?
And cheering.
And cheering, that's right. That's right. Cheering has taken a hit as well, for sure, in the fall. But
the pyramid has toppled.
Sis boom ba. But but I guess maybe that speaks to what is there to cheer for. I don't know. Maybe that's the thing here. But Phil, what are you hearing from Northeastern Conference folks? I mean, they can revisit this, right? I mean, are they going to revisit this?
They can. I talked to several athletic directors yesterday. Actually disappointed I didn't hear back from some of them. But, hey, it is what it is. I'm sure maybe some people have a gag order on or whatnot, which is too bad. But fortunately, I did get a chance to speak with some of them who were good enough to speak to me in confidence off the record. And, for a lot of them, it is dependent, as Willie alluded to, the schools that are going remote, they need the okay from the school committee, whether that's a 5-person or 7-person committee. So there are a lot of meetings coming up. For instance, Thursday night, Marblehead had its meeting. And if I'm reading this right, they gave the okay for the principal, Dan Bauer, and the athletic director, Greg Sigloski, to further explore the possibility of playing. Is it feasible? How would they do it? Come up with a plan, that kind of thing. I know there are school committee meetings in Peabody on this coming Tuesday night, and Salem on this coming Tuesday night. Wednesday, you're looking at Beverly. You're looking at Swampscott, and you're looking at Gloucester. I believe Danvers is a week from Monday. So there's certainly time for 1, 2, maybe a handful of schools, as many as a half dozen, to join Masconomet in playing, which, let's be honest, that would be terrific for the league to do that, where you could have a league-only schedule, say 10 or 12 games of boys and girls soccer and cross country and golf and field hockey. And then that way you wouldn't have to look for outside games. I've already gotten schedules from St. John's Prep. St. Mary's of Lynn sent over their schedules. Both of those schools are going to be playing a league-only schedule. So Bishop Fenwick will be playing. I know that Essex Tech is waiting to hear what's going on when I spoke with their athletic director, Farrah Lally. I haven't heard back from Pingree yet, so I don't know what's going on over there. It sounds as though Lynn Tech and Kip Academy, I read that looks like they're going to be pushed off until the fall too, which would certainly be the case with Lynn English and Lynn Classical because they are still in the red. One good note for the conference is it looks like Winthrop, which has been in the red, will be out of it as soon as next week. So that could change for the Vikings athletically too. So a lot of moving pieces, things seemingly change by the day, if not the hour. And, it bears mentioning that it seems like the student athletes, even more than the parents and the coaches, have really made a difference in making their voices heard, advocating for themselves and letting people know that they want to be able to do this. They feel like they can do it safely. Now, whether or not they can, who knows? But it's certainly made a difference up at Masconomet where those kids, what were they, Willie, like before the actual meeting on Wednesday night, there were kids outside the school saying, let us have our seasons, that kind of thing. And as it turned out, after Peter Delaney and John Delanis, the principal and athletic director, respectively, at Masco, made their pitches, the school committee voted unanimously to go ahead and hold fall sports. So I think it's a good lesson for the student athletes to show that their voices can be heard when they do it in a constructive and positive fashion.
Yeah, I think something to keep an eye on is the domino effect. I think, I've heard a couple of people around the periphery of the NEC sort of say off the record that they didn't necessarily want to be the first domino to fall, the first one to go against the tide. Well, now Masco's done it. Masco's opened that door. So I'll be very interested to see if that leads to another school going through the door. And if once there's two, maybe there's two more that want to do it and on and on and on. I think, now that the precedent's been set, ideally, maybe you have a 6 and a 6. And then you could, because let's face it, we're not playing a full season. You're not going to be able to play everyone in your league anyway. So if there are some that want to wait to fall too, great. If there are some that don't, great. And that would give both sections of the conference the opportunity to compete for an NEC championship. The whether it's the North or the South, whether you call it, the October championship or the February championship, whatever. That would be pretty cool. So I think now that Masco has kind of gone out on that limb, there might be some other people, following, and hopefully, it's not actually a limb and they don't all follow out there on the branch and have it break on them. That's all.
I will say this, kind of following up that point. It seems to me, if I'm reading, what did you say, Willie, the tea leaves, if you're reading, that there is much more cohesion and that the Cape Ann League athletic directors are a little more copacetic than the Northeastern Conference, where there seems to be some strong feelings on both sides of the issue. So take that for what it's worth.
It just makes me go back and think that they should have just taken a spell. That meeting 2 weeks ago when all this happens, easy for me to say on the outside, but somebody should have stood up and said, hey, fellas, let's just let this simmer for a week, a couple of days and get back. Yeah. Let's not make a decision today that's going to blow up in our face that we're all going to go back on anyway.
I think there was some people in that room that very definitely wanted to do that, and others had it in their minds that they were going to, make decisions that day that were going to affect the entire fall and possibly beyond. So
it's very premature, I'd say, and hopefully it's a lesson for when they make their decisions about the winter and the spring that hey, let's take our time.
I have a question, and Phil, we spoke about this briefly before the podcast here, but if enough of these teams, or if any of these teams in the NEC join Masco and want to have a fall season, but the NEC already said no, does that mean that these games being played among those NEC teams will count towards like an actual NEC championship, or will the NEC not want anything to do with them during this season? You know, like in summer baseball, there was that case with the Legion baseball team. They didn't want the baseball going on, so they created their own league. I mean, is that what these NEC teams are going to have to do? Just create their own schedule and not have it affiliated with their actual conference?
No, I think that's a great question, Nick. No, I think it's not that they don't want them to play. It's just a recommendation.
Right.
That
I think it's the other thing with high school is it's kind of informal, right? So it's not like there's an NEC office somewhere with an executive like you have in the Big Ten and the SEC. And
Yeah.
if Beverly's a boys soccer team goes undefeated and they decide to put 2020 on their NEC championship banner at the Cabot Lodge, you know, I don't think anybody's going to go in there and make them take it down like it's Marcus Camby at UMass here, you know? Fair
enough. All right.
Where is the NEC headquarters anyways? Do we know where it's located?
It used to be Super Sub, but I think
office. That's where it's located.
The closed Salem News office, the shuttered Salem News office. Yeah.
So I guess now it's the between mine and Willie's house with connections to the two Nicks.
Yeah, it used to be Neatco, but you know.
Nick, I know what you were saying, because with respect to the kids, it makes a difference if they go out and play an individual schedule or a schedule that is not, for want of a better term, NEC sanctioned.
Right.
And they're going to want to know what the hell they're doing in one aspect. But on the other hand, it seems to me that they want to play, and it doesn't really make any difference whether it's called the Northeastern Conference or what it's called. Just get out there and play and get something going. And I think that's a possibility too, guys. Is that something hybrid, to use a term, could arise from this? Maybe not MIAA sanctioned, which is a whole other ballgame, but something could pop up. I talked with 3 football coaches last week, 2 from the NEC and 1 from the Cape Ann League. And man, 3 different emotions, 3 different feelings, 3 different ideas, just completely different among the 3 of them. And there is absolutely no consensus among those 3 guys anyway with football. And I just, to me, and I don't know, Nick, if this is where you're headed, but it just seems to me, if schools want to play and there's no league format or something or other, then, you know, maybe they can play and just get out there and have competition.
Yeah, I don't think the kids are going to care one way or the other. I mean, sure, would they like to play for an NEC title, obviously, but I think they just want to play in general. You know, if they can come up with some sort of schedule, the kids are going to be on board.
Brings us to St. Mary's Lynn. Jeff Newhall sent out their schedules today, and I noticed very exciting. At the end of their seasons, they're going to do a CCL elimination playoff tournament. So that's going to give those kids a taste of tournament ball. So that's a pretty cool idea by the CCL, and maybe
the Catholic Conference is doing the same thing. Yeah, Catholic Conference is going to do the same thing. I noticed on the prep schedules, which you're right, it is cool. It gives the kids a sense of something.
Yeah,
reminds me of college. You know, you got the Big Ten tournament before the NCAA's or whatever.
Right.
I think it's really cool.
Kooks, I actually meant to try Brian LaFata, the Gloucester AD, yesterday when I was making my round of calls and didn't have a chance to. But have you spoken with him just to see what his thoughts are, what might be going on down with the fishermen?
Not on the record, but yeah, I've spoken to him about things that are going on, and I mean they're kind of in the same spot. I think they're in wait and see mode, to be honest with you. I don't know. Their school committee meetings next week. I'm going to be as surprised as anybody what comes out of that, to be honest with you.
Do you get the sense that whether it's Brian himself or the coaches or the student athletes want to play, or are they hesitant to do so?
From the Gloucester coaches I've talked to, they seemed a lot more resigned to the fact than I was expecting. They all seemed like they saw it coming from a mile away and have kind of made peace with it, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was a little surprised too, to be honest with you. But I mean, you can see where they're coming from. It's tough to really stay optimistic.
Now, how's Gloucester in terms of like the map? The coronavirus map.
The green. They were in the white a couple weeks ago. I think they moved up into the green.
Okay. It's not red.
But
exactly.
Phil and Matt, didn't the NEC superintendents meet in the last week or so too, following the AD meeting that we've been talking about here? And that's kind of, we don't really know what happened there, right? Does that sound right?
Yeah, we don't. I mean, I can get some, again, if you kind of sift through the paperwork, so to speak, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. I mean, I think to be quite honest, they have so much on their plate that the state of athletics is probably quite a bit down the pecking order or priority order at this point. Um, they're worried about whether it's in person or remote. They're worried about if their teachers are in the building or working from home, and what the ventilation systems are like, and how are they going to monitor kids who are working from home. So I think athletics is like one of those things. Yeah, we'll get to it. They just don't want there to be infighting among the athletic directors. So I think they were trying to get together and make something happen. And there were some. I thought this was great too. Some mayors in some of the towns that got involved in the process with the superintendents. And we always think of the conference as bigger than the Cape Ann League. Well, there's only, what do we say, Willie, 4 mayors out of the 12 or 5 mayors out of the conference?
Yeah, Beverly, Peabody, Gloucester, Salem, and
Lynn, right?
Lynn, yeah.
I don't believe Saugus has a mayor.
No.
I think so. So, yeah, but anyway, some of them were, I don't know if they were invited or they got involved or whatnot, but they were part of the process of trying to handle things there. I think one thing that's kind of interesting to note that we haven't talked about is that, let's say, to use Masconomet as an example, they find some opponents, whether it's other conference teams or whatever, and they play or they start a fall 1 sports schedule. If there is an outbreak, or if the district goes into the red, or God forbid there's a coronavirus case among one of the players or whatnot, and they have to shut down, they would have to apply to the MIAA's committee to play in the fall too, and that's no guarantee. So if you start in this season and it doesn't see its way through, I mean, you might go a week and then you got to shut down. There's no chance those kids will get the chance to resume their seasons in the fall too. So that's something to keep in mind.
Well, I have a question, guys. If the state has one set of guidelines and the MIAA sort of ties into that and adds their own, is that how it works?
Well, they all work together.
Good, Willie.
I was just gonna say they all work together. So the state, they all kind of worked in concert with the MIAA COVID task force. So they're posted in different places, but they all come out together.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, can a high school play sports, interscholastic sports under state guidelines and just kind of not pay any attention to the MIAA? I mean, I know their membership, but just would they be banned? Would there be some kind of penalty or something or other if they play outside the MIAA league schedules type thing?
Well, so for instance,
I'm asking.
Just as an example, like track, when they go to nationals, technically they're not allowed to, so they go as clubs, right? So essentially, yeah, there's a possibility that you could function as a club sport, if you call it, Lightning FC, and, it's all the girls that are on your varsity soccer team, but it's not Beverly High, it's Lightning FC, and their opponent isn't Danvers High, it's Bruins FC,
Gotcha. Yep.
Right now that's allowed because it's happening. I mean, the Nick Giannino mentioned the Essex County baseball, the Legion baseball earlier. I mean, you essentially had a good chunk of Beverly High's varsity against a good chunk of Fenwick's varsity in some of those games, right? So I mean, you could theoretically function that way and you wouldn't get in any trouble, so to speak. I mean, it's a fine line because typically your high school coaches, just like in summer hockey, in the regular non-pandemic times, I mean, you're not really supposed to be involved in that stuff, but
Right.
I don't think anybody's going to bust chops about that stuff in the pandemic. But if you did have a stickler that wanted to really file a complaint, I suppose they could. So you kind of be careful about that. Possible. I mean, it might be potentially hard for those kind of places to get fields, right? Because it costs money. Technically, little leagues and Essex County leagues and whatnot have to rent those fields from the towns. So that's money that normally the high schools don't pay, right? So the town could either say, no, we won't rent you the field, or that's a financial obstacle potentially if it had to go that way. But theoretically, there's no reason they couldn't, if all that stuff wasn't a factor.
I want to kind of circle back and kind of recap a little bit here, and go back to one of Phil's points earlier, and that and the timing piece here, and that school committees are meeting in this coming week and the following week, and looking at the calendar. Basically, we keep saying this in a way, but there's 2 more weeks of decisions of time before schools really have to make decisions, or cities and towns. I mean, they really do have 2 more weeks. And to Phil's point, school superintendents and principals have much more on their plate than just athletics. I get that. And right now they're trying to get classes going either remotely or a hybrid model or whatever. So that's first and foremost. And so I think Phil nailed it on that piece. But I look at it, and I think it'll be interesting to see what cities and towns will do moving forward here. And if things get better, as far as the virus is concerned, and they seem to be doing a lot better on the virus, but we'll see what happens. And so they can, I think, as somebody pointed out earlier, they could have, paused this and decided a little bit later on. So I'm thinking that we still have another 2 weeks before really a real decision has to be made here, because that would take you down to the 21st, that would be a Monday. And now all these other school committees will be meeting and by that time. So it's now up at the superintendent's level. It's kind of beyond the principals, to be quite honest with you. And it's at the city and town level. So we'll see what happens.
And I think that something that needs to be thought about here when making these decisions, if you're on a school committee or whatnot, if there isn't some form of sports attempted in fall 1, you might run the risk of a year without athletics at your school. Because who's to say, you keep, if you listen to the experts, as they're called, or whatnot, it seems that most of them think there could be a second wave or a spike once the weather turns, or, we get into the winter months. So if the winter gets wiped out, they say we can't have things indoors, so there's no basketball, no hockey, no, indoor track, whatever. And then fall 2 gets wiped out because of that. Then you're looking at, we've gone a full year without high school sports if you haven't played already since last spring was wiped out. I think it's something really to consider, that you really want to have an entire year where your student athletes can't play athletics. And I realize, we've been saying this for months and months. Safety is the number one concern. It has to be for everyone, student athletes especially. But if there's any possibility that you can play, I think it's important that you try, because none of us know what the future holds. And if it gets worse and you missed out on an opportunity to do so now, that's a bad optic.
Especially when your neighbors are playing. It's one thing in the abstract. We all kind of joked around, well, Catholics are playing, kids are going to transfer. I'm starting to hear varsity NEC contributors that are sniffing around some of these private schools to transfer. So it's real. So if you're the Northeast Conference, you have to think about that, because once that door opens and people start leaving, it's one thing when everybody's shut down, but if the school 2 minutes down the road is open, for sports, then some of these athletes are going to start leaving and you're never going to get them back.
Going back to what you said, Phil, the expert that I listen to is Dr. Giannino here. I whatever he says, I listen to that and I respect that,
I say play on.
I don't know if I trust guys with those anti-glare glasses. Mine are all glares. So.
They work wonders.
They do. You don't look like a extraterrestrial like I do.
One other thing I wanted to mention here, I guess. Nick, anything else up in the Gloucester and the Cape Ann area to share with us? Any news in the last week or so from up there?
Rockport and Manchester, Essex, the coaches I talked to, they're just assuming they're playing there. They haven't they haven't ruled that they can yet in either town, but I mean, they're all going forward like they're having a season there. They're pretty confident they will. Cautiously optimistic was the term I've heard a lot of from Manchester, Essex, and Rockport coaches.
Well, the best ventilation is out on that soccer field, to be honest with you. I don't think we have no domes. Danvers doesn't have a soccer dome yet, right? I don't think they do.
No.
No, they don't.
No.
No. So everyone's playing outside in the fall. So, yeah.
Which is great. I mean, hey, we're all used to it, football weather. We know how to layer up, and it's just switching sports,
Hey, I got to. Phil, you guys have been running a series with the coaches on a daily basis in the paper, and I caught the Jim Pugh feature that was in Friday's paper, I believe, right? And I picked up on his 2 Netflix suggestions, and I researched them, and they look like pretty good suggestions. So if anybody's looking for Netflix suggestions, take a look at that piece in the Salem News from Jim Pugh. The rest of the stuff, that he shared, the heck with it. But no, the Netflix suggestions were good.
Jethro, Jimmy, I call him Jethro. Jethro and I, spoke maybe 3 weeks ago, and he had mentioned those to me then, and I put them in my Netflix queue, and, you kind of forget about them. And then when he sent that, when he and I were talking again recently, and he mentioned those, I'm like, oh, I got to watch those here. So maybe once the hockey playoffs are over, I'll get the chance to watch those,
I didn't see it. What were they? The suspense is killing me.
Oh, it's good. One was Muscle Shoals, about the famous music studio down in Alabama, where like all these legendary people have played at this studio, and like the different styles, everything from like the Stones to soul and all this stuff, and like what made the place so famous. And the other one was it When the Game Was Ours, or For the Love of the Game? It was one of those two. Sports documentary that looked really good. So
the black rowing team. That's
yes,
what it,
that's what it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't
ask me the name of it. I wouldn't know, but yeah, I forgot.
Even though Jethro's a Yankee fan, I do consider him wise. I just look at that as a mulligan on his resume that he happened to grow up in New York. But I take it that he has good taste in most other things. So I am going to definitely check out those 2 documentaries.
If you grow up in an area and you support the team in your area, I give people a pass on that one, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
seriously.
no.
You know what I mean?
No, I do. If I moved, I would stay loyal to the teams I like. I have a brother who lives outside of New York City, and he's raised his boys to be, Red Sox, Patriots, Bruins, Celtics fans, and much to the consternation of their friends. So I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I have no excuse then.
Yeah, right. As a Laker fan,
Yep.
Hey, real quick, speaking of which, you 2 fellas from MSO might know better than the rest of us. I caught a little bit of it, but Tom Seaver passed away this week, the great Tom Seaver. I never got a chance to watch him in his prime. I kind of caught the end of his, well, not the end, but, I remember him near the end with the Mets before he got traded to the Reds and then back to the Mets. And I'll say this, one thing that I don't think came out in most people concentrate on the fact that he played for the Mets, that he was one of the greatest pitchers ever, and blah, 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 blah. I maintain, as somebody who was 17 years old during the 86 World Series, the Red Sox and the Mets, if Tom Seaver hadn't been hurt in that postseason and could have pitched Game 4 for the Red Sox instead of the atrocious Al Nipper, the Red Sox beat the Mets in 5 games. Curse of the Bambino ends 18 years early. There's no Buckner ball between the legs. There's no Stanley Wild pitch, anything like that. So if only Tom Terrific could have pitched Game 4 for the Red Sox, things might have been much different.
But to Seaver, a workhorse, he has like over 50 complete games. Nobody does that now.
Right.
Three Cy Youngs, a workhorse, and Vin Scully says he's the best right-hander he's ever seen. So that says a lot.
It does. And for longevity, I think it stands for something. I would put that season by Pedro Martinez, what was it, the 2000 season, up against anybody, to be honest with you. Going 20-3 against the juiciest ball era of all time. If it wasn't last year. But yeah, I mean, Siva was an amazing workhorse, and just when you watch like old YouTube clips of him, the way he threw and put his body into the pitches and spotted his pitches, it was amazing.
Yeah, I used to watch him before there was YouTube. Man,
Really?
yeah.
There was life before YouTube, huh?
I believe there was. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, there's yeah. But yeah.
My kids
Nope.
ask me that. Like, how did you watch YouTube before? Like,
Without a smartphone, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Forget the dial phone,
Yeah.
Man.
You had to get up and change the channel, Mike. Yeah. Can you believe that? Holy cow.
That's what I used to be in shape back then, man. Okay, on that note, we'll wrap it up. Gentlemen, always good talking with you. Have a great holiday weekend.
Happy Labor Day, guys.
You too, Bill.
Good weekend.
Good Labor Day.